Are you familiar with the historic idea of a Renaissance man? A man who can do all things if he will. We can witness many examples of this manhood since the term was coined in Renaissance Italy to describe Leonardo da Vinci, Blaise Pascal, Benjamin Franklin, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and even Brad Pitt. We consider them great figures and ideal examples of man's potential, but outside of this narrow title for a universal, timeless idea of a multi-talented individual, there are women who lived its constituents before the period of the Renaissance, much less before the idea of a Renaissance man came about. Many of them exist within our own church. Named the Sibyl of the Rhine, or, in the words of Brandon Wanless, a girl boss. Hildegard of Bingen was an abbess, artist, author, composer, mystic, pharmacist, poet, preacher, and theologian. Though she racks up an impressive resume, among common Catholics, St. Hildegard of Bingen is often the least familiar female doctor of the Church. Born into a noble family in 1098, Hildegard's parents gave her to the Church as a customary tithe when she was very young. She and other young noble women lived a very lonely life in the monastery, cloistered away from the monks, each in their own cells. It was a harsh lifestyle, but their only other option was to enter arranged marriages early in their teen years. Hildegard only interacted with one other woman, the head abbess of the monastery, Saint Jutta of Sponheim. Over time, Jutta became Hildegard's friend as well as her mentor, and after many years, Hildegard entrusted Jutta with one of her deepest secrets. Since she was 3 years old, God revealed himself to Hildegard in visions of what she would later call the divine light, but crippling anxiety kept her from sharing them. Due to her own self-doubt and fear that others wouldn't believe her, Hildegard suppressed her visions until she was 43, when she received the most important vision of her life. In this vision, God told her to not be afraid to share what he had revealed to her. She wrote about her visions in a collection called Scivias, which translates to, "Know the ways of the Lord." Even Pope Eugene III asked her to read her work and encouraged her to keep sharing her visions with the Church.
St. Hildegard was heavily convicted that the earth is what sustains humanity, and she instructed the nuns of her order to really take notice of the rhythms and patterns of the earth that God so purposefully placed in it. She saw the calling of the human race to be to co-create, cultivating the earth and simultaneously cultivating a relationship with the Creator. It's apparent that Hildegard's deep love and admiration for the earth stemmed from her desire to create a heaven on earth to please God. Hildegard was ahead of her time in many ways, advocating for the proper treatment of nature and for respect for women in society. In recent years, actually, interest in her life and historical significances skyrocketed as social battles for women's rights and issues surrounding climate change have become more prominent. Although her legacy spanned beyond the spiritual world in very impressive ways, her impact on the Catholic Church was her greatest gift to humanity, specifically through her visions. Hildegard received a number of divine visions in which God revealed himself to her by way of his natural creation. In her book, Scivias, she narrates about 26 of her first visions, which include the creation story and numerous other important biblical stories, and she repeatedly refers to God as the light giver. She described her reception of these visions as this: "A fiery light of exceeding brilliance came and permeated my whole brain and inflamed my whole heart and my whole breast, not like a burning, but like a warming flame, as the sun warms anything that its rays touch." This is one of my favorite quotes of hers. I think that it really encapsulates the powerful way that God showed to Hildegard a sort of spiritual kinship between himself and his greatest gift to us, the natural world. Her book also focuses greatly on the concept of viriditas, which can be translated from Latin as fruitfulness or growth. It's a metaphor for spiritual and physical health, and she believed it was one of the main attributes of God.
In addition to the Scivias, Hildegard would write 2 more collections recounting her visions. She also wrote the first German Catholic theater production and composed chants for masses, one of which you have been listening to for the past several minutes. Late in her life, she traveled widely throughout Europe evangelizing. She corresponded with many bishops and archbishops cross-continent and spoke openly about corruption in the church at the time. After Judah's death, Hildegard became head abbess of her Benedictine order and eventually founded another convent. She faced great backlash for this act, as it was not common for women to found convents. This controversy was the subject of the 2009 German feminist film by Margrethe von Trotta.
Saint Hildegard, a great saint, was known as one of the 4 great women doctors of the Church. Doctor, coming from the Latin root docere, meaning to teach, is exactly what Hildegard did. Hildegard had a great many accomplishments, but above all, her main focus was serving and worshiping God. Saint Hildegard was relatable to many people, which only increased the amount of evangelization she was able to do. Not only was she an incredible theologian and proclaimer of the Church, but she was also a poet, composer, abbess, mystic, writer, musician, and much more. She traveled around the world, giving advice to laity, pope, bishops, and even emperors, professing the faith and combating heresy. On top of all of that, she, being an abbess, ran her own nunnery. As Pope Benedict XVI said, Hildegard expressed the most noble virtues of womanhood. Hence, the presence of women in the Church and in society is also illuminated by her presence both from the perspective of scientific research and that of pastoral activity. St. Hildegard is a great model for all young women and shows great love for the Church and the world.
Strong and resilient female leader in the Vision film, as well as other areas of pop culture. In the 2018 show, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Hildegard is referenced in a list of historical witches, which, it should be noted, there is no proof of, but it shows her lasting impact nonetheless. Her influence and wisdom have even been noted in other religious circles. Gogi Krishna, a well-known Hindu mystic, listed her among individuals he believed had achieved higher consciousness on account of her visions and their content. In fact, Hildegard and Krishna's account of their visions are very similar. The nature of her writing about her visions seems almost pantheist, but she obviously believes in Orthodox theology. She uses blatant Christian language, speaking about the Trinity and the resurrection. These nods to Hildegard's legacy are of course impressive, but what makes her such a Catholic icon outside of her ageless historical relevance? Just as she defined the characteristics of a Renaissance man, while defying its slim title, Hildegard of Bingen achieved sainthood by living a holy life, but also proved her greatness by transcending religious tradition and embracing a grand, inclusive vision of Christ's love and revelation.